Hello everybody, and welcome to a Grimdark Future Firefight Battle Report. Prime Brother Supreme Command has detected the presence of several life forms on the surface of the planet Crapus 4. The planet was previously home to great industrial complexes and cities, but scarred and destroyed by war, it's now abandoned. Or so it was. Prime Brother Lieutenant Gabriel and his squad are sent to a forest and mountain area outside a former city to investigate the activity. And soon after landing, they detect hostile forces in the outskirts of the forest. A group of alien life forms led by a huge Hive Guard approaches. The brothers prepare to fight. And here we have the threatening alien force led by the Hive Guardian armed with heavy Ravager gun. We have shooter grunts armed with Bioboros, 2 soul snatchers with piercing claws, and 2 hive swarms with their swarm attack. 250 points of aliens. And they go up against Lieutenant Gabriel and his squad. Lieutenant Gabriel is armed with heavy pistol and energy sword. He has an assault brother with heavy pistol and energy sword, 2 prime brothers, one armed with auto rifle and one with heavy rifle, and finally a raider brother armed with heavy pistol and energy sword, and he is Furious and Strider. And all of them are fearless. They will deploy like this with the aliens in the player A zone and Lieutenant Gabriel deploying his forces as player B. There are 3 objectives on the battlefield and they are arranged like this. Objective 1 here, and 2 in the upper right corner, and 3 in the upper left corner. The player that controls the most objectives at the end of turn 4 will be the winner. Lieutenant Gabriel has deployed his forces in 2 groups here, outside a small group of trees. And the aliens have spread out along the edge of their deployment zone, with the Hive Guardian hiding behind the rock, and the Soul Snatchers and Hive Swarms spread out, so they are close to the 2 objectives. Now let's roll off red dice for the aliens and black dice for the Prime Brothers to see who will activate in the first round. And the first activation will be the Prime Brothers. Let's go to round number 1. And the first unit to activate is Lieutenant Gabriel himself, who will move into cover behind the trees, and that will be his first activation. Next up, the Hive Guardian will do more or less the same. Move closer to the trees, stay out of sight, and wait to see what happens. Next up, the Raider brother Marcus here, who will position himself behind the rock but a little closer for potential charges. The first Hive Swarm is on the move and it seizes the first objective. And by doing so, it becomes visible to Brother Francis here with the heavy rifle, so he moves to have a clear shot. He hits on a 3+, so that's a hit. Let's see if the Hive Swarm can defend. It needs a 6, otherwise it will get 1 wound. And it fails, so 1 wound for the Hive Swarm. The Soul Snatcher here moves up. It has no ranged weapons, so it moves closer behind the large middle rock, safe in cover. Brother Lothar with the auto rifle goes on Overwatch. But when the second Soul Snatcher moves here, it's not in his line of sight. He takes cover behind a rock and he is now relatively close to Lieutenant Gabriel and his men. The final Prime Brother to activate is Brother Gennaro here, and he rushes to the rock wall where he will be in cover, and he's also close to the objective, but not close enough to seize it yet. The shooter grunts move through the forest. They have Strider, so it won't hinder them, and they take position behind the rock. They are not yet in shooting range. And last activation in this round is the final Hive Swarm that moves to and seizes Objective 3. So a look at the battlefield here at the end of round 1. The aliens have moved and they have seized 2 objectives. Lieutenant Gabriel and his men are in a somehow defensive position. They haven't seized any objectives and they are still not able to see the Hive Guard, the Soul Snatchers, or the Assault Grunts. But they will activate first in the second round. First brother to activate in round 2 is Brother Francis, and again a rather defensive move here. He will go to Overwatch. The Assault Grunts activate and move clear of the rock, and they are now within 12-inch shooting range at Lieutenant Gabriel. They have 6 shots with the Bioboros, and they need 6s to hit because he is in cover. 6 shots and no hits. And the lieutenant immediately fires back with his heavy pistol, 1 shot, needing a 4 because they are in cover behind the rock, so with a 3 he fails his shot. The Soul Snatcher behind the rock decides to charge. It is fast, so the charge range is 16 inches, and it charges Brother Gennaro. 3 attacks, hitting on 3s, and 2 hits, and with an AP -1, Gennaro needs a 3 to save. So he saves 1 of the hits, and it will give him 1 wound, and he'll have to make a roll on the wound chart now to see if he's stunned or knocked out of the game. And the result here is a 5, so he leaves the battlefield as the first casualty. Brother Francis moves clear of the forest and close to the objective to avenge his fallen brother. He has 2 shots with an auto rifle hitting on 3s. And 1 hit against the Soul Snatcher, who will now defend on a 4+. And that's a 3, so 1 hit going through. And it has to make a roll on the wound chart now. It's a 3, so it's stunned. Next up we have the huge but clumsy Hive Guardian, who moves clear of the trees and up behind the rock where it will be in cover. Someone has to do something, and with the risky move here, Brother Marcus has to use all of his 12-inch charge range to reach the Soul Snatcher. And when he charges, he is furious, so he will get an extra attack for a total of 4 attacks with the Energy Sword, needing 3s to hit. And 3 hits with the Energy Sword, AP -1, and that means 5 up saves for the Soul Snatcher. 1 save, 2 hits going through, and it will now need a roll on the wound chart on a 3 or less. And with a 6, there is no doubt he is knocked out. But now it's payback time. The Hive Swarm moves up with 3 attacks, attacking Brother Marcus. It needs 6s to hit, but if it hits with a 6, it will be poisonous, and there are 2 6s, so each of these hits will be multiplied with 3, so it's a total of 6 hits against Marcus. He will now need to defend on a 3+. And he blocks 4 of the attacks, but still 2 going through, so 2 hits, and he will have to roll on the wound chart. And it's a 3, so he is stunned, but still in the game. And final activation of round 2 is the Hive Swarm over here. It's too far away to charge the fallen brother, but it will take cover behind the rock. There are losses on both sides here after round 2. The aliens still control 2 objectives, but the Prime Brothers have managed to seize the 3rd objective. Now let's continue this battle with round number 3. And since they finished first, the Prime Brothers will activate first. And the first activation is Raider Brother Marcus, who jumps up, and he's no longer stunned. But we will see for how long, because now the shooter grunts move back behind the rock and they fire 6 shots, needing 5s against Brother Marcus. And they get 2 hits. And it's AP nothing, so Brother Marcus will need 3s to defend. And first he get a 6 and then a 5. So he is safe for now. It was a risky move by the aliens because they have left one Soul Snatcher still stunned. So Brother Lothar charges, and by that he takes the Soul Snatcher out of the game. But it's not over for Brother Marcus. He is now charged by the Hive Swarm with 3 attacks needing 6s, and with 1 6 still poisonous, the hit is multiplied with 3. So he gets 3 hits and has to defend on a 3+. And he gets 2, but 1 hit is still going through, so he now has 3 wounds. And he needs a roll on the wound chart. And let's see. And with a 3, the total is 6, and that means that Brother Marcus, who performed great, now unfortunately is knocked out. It's time for Lieutenant Gabriel to step up, so he charges out of the forest against the Hive Swarm. He's not furious, but he still has 3 attacks with his energy sword, needing 3s. And with 2 hits, the Hive Swarm has to defend on a 6. And no success, so it will receive 2 wounds for a total of 3. And now it has to roll on the wound chart. With a 3, it's still good, but stunned. The other Hive Swarm charges against the Lieutenant. Still 3 attacks, needing 6s. And again, the Hive Swarm manages to get a hit, which means 3 hits coming in, and Lieutenant Gabriel needs 2s to defend. And he does that in style. He can fight back now, but since he has fought before, he will be fatigued, and he will need 6s to hit. Still, he manages to hit the Hive Swarm once, and with a 6 for defense, it fails and receives a wound. Now Brother Francis moves clear of the forest for a risky move and a precision shot against the Hive Swarm. His line of sight is not obstructed by the Lieutenant, but he will need a 4 because of the cover. And with a 5, he makes the shot, and that means the Hive Swarm is immediately knocked out of the game. Now finally, the Hive Guardian decides to do something, so it moves clear of the rocks and fires its Ravager gun against Lieutenant Gabriel. 3 shots, hitting on 3s. And it manages to fail 2 of these shots. 1 shot going through, it's an AP2, so Lieutenant Gabriel will need a 4 up to save. And with a 5, he stands strong. At the end of the round, the aliens are down to half their starting strength, so we need morale checks. Hive Swarm first, it will need a 5, and with a 2, they are out of here. And then the shooter grunts, they have adrenaline, so if they fail with a 5 in their morale check, one of them will die and the rest will stay. But with a 5, they all stay. And finally the Hive Guardian, it will need a 3. And with a 2, it fails the morale check and the leader has left the battlefield, leaving the shooter grunts alone with the Prime Brothers. So at the end of the third round here, things went from relatively good to really bad for the aliens, leaving the shooter grunts as the only active alien units. They still control 2 objectives though, and the Prime Brothers control 1. Now let's go to round number 4. Lieutenant Gabriel activates first and he charges the shooter grunts. He has 3 attacks with his energy sword and he will need 3s to succeed. And all 3 attacks hit. Now with an AP 1, the shooter grunts need 6s to defend, and they get 1, and that means 2 shooter grunts are knocked out. Now the shooter grunt fights back, 1 attack needing a 5, and it makes the attack. Lieutenant Gabriel has to defend on a 2, and he makes that barely. Single surviving shooter grunt tries to escape, firing 2 shots in the process, needing 5s, and none of them hits the lieutenant. Brother Lothar is too far away to reach and seize the objective, but he can move closer and get himself into shooting range with his auto rifle. 2 shots against the remaining shooter grunt, needing 3s. And that is 2 hits. And the grunt has to make a 5-up save. So it makes 1, and 1 hit will go through. And that means it will have to roll on the wound chart. And with a 6, the final alien now leaves the battlefield. Finally, Brother Francis secures the victory as he rushes 12-inch and gets in the needed range of the objective to control it, and that means the Prime Brothers now control 2 objectives and the aliens have left the building. The Prime Brothers, led by Lieutenant Gabriel, managed to overcome a relatively bad start and seize the objectives and eliminate the aliens. So here we have the winning team. But there is no doubt that there will be other hostile forces nearby, so they have to stay cautious. Thanks a lot for watching this battle report. I hope you'll join me for future bat reps.